Welcome to tonight's Eyes on Ice, Stories of Struggles of Resistance tonight, hosted by my name. Mi nombre es Alexander Hernandez. I am one of the co-chairs of the Immigrant Rights Working Group of DSA. I'm really super excited that tonight we have a bunch of folks who are going to share their stories and about a coalition and folks working together. I'm really excited about MiJente. We have folks from MiJente who put these forums that are happening across the country. They've been happening all week and before. I can't remember the date they started, but I think there's a couple of weeks in. You know, if this is sort of a model folks are encouraged to check out. They put a wonderful, MiJente put a wonderful organizing guide for these types of forums where folks can come share stories and ultimately to compile and present. And I'll pass it off to Chloe from MiJente, who's with us tonight, who can touch more on that, and then we'll get into the agenda. Chloe?
Yeah, so we just wanted to give folks a little bit of context about why we decided to host these forums called Eyes on Ice. It's a series of truth and accountability forums that we're hosting as MiJente under the We Are Home Coalition. So right now there is a lot of buzz about legislation focused on immigration. And of course, we think that's important, but we think it's equally important for everyone to remember that Joe Biden and Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas have a lot of power just in and of their own right, even without Congress. They don't have to wait at all for Congress in order to be able to end programs like 287G and secure communities that fuse policing and mass incarceration and mass deportation. They don't need to wait at all to grant thousands of people stays of removal and to stop the deportations that are happening right now. And so that's why we launched Eyes on Ice, in Spanish, La Migra en la Mira, to be able to really bring attention to the fact that ICE enforcement and deportations are something that continue to affect communities across the country. So we're telling stories from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the South to the North, right? Just about how these ICE enforcement programs continue to impact people today. And we have publicly invited Alejandro Mayorkas to a last National Eyes on ICE forum with us on May 3rd. So we're expecting him to be there and to be in the hot seat answering questions from our communities. We hope that he'll make it to that final National Truth and Accountability Forum. And we hope that he's open to hearing from folks who have been directly impacted by these programs, exactly about how they need to change and how they have caused harm. So we do have a list of 6 demands, apart from that demand that he show up at the last National Forum. And I just want to share them with you here tonight. We are demanding that the administration grant stays of removal to all of the individuals facing deportation and conduct a review to release every person currently in detention. We don't want to hear excuses about the deportation moratorium being stuck in court when we know that granting stays of removal is something that's under the discretion of the Department of Homeland Security and something that can be done now. We also want to close detention facilities and end the use of private prisons and state and local jails. We want to stop the fusion of mass policing with mass deportation by ending the 287G program, the Secure Communities program, and the use of ICE detainers. We want the US court system to be stopped from criminalizing immigrant communities by ending Operation Streamline, all prosecutions for entry and re-entry, and closing hundreds of thousands of deportation cases on the immigration court docket. We want prosecutorial discretion guidelines that will provide relief from hypercriminalization, not more punishment. And finally, we want people seeking asylum at the southern border to be allowed to enter the country the way that they've always done, instead of detaining or turning them away under the pseudoscience order of Title 42, which was implemented under the Trump administration and continues to be implemented now. So again, these 6 demands are demands that are being made across the immigrant rights movement, right? These are not just MiJente's demands. They're not just DSA's demands. They are the demands of the We Are Home Coalition, a group of over 100 different immigrant and civil rights organizations. So we're asking everybody to sign onto the petition for these demands, to join us in calling for Alejandro Mayorkas to listen to these demands and to actually listen to folks and come to the last National Forum. And I will pass it over to you, Alexander, so that we can hear from all of the amazing speakers tonight.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for that and for all the work you and the folks at MiJente always doing. Thank you. All right. So aside from MiJente, the Immigrant Rights Working Group of DSA, this was also put together by the Afrosocialists and Socialists of Color Caucus. And we also have folks from Raíces who got involved with us. We have, and I'll do a quick overview on our speakers before I kick it off to our first speaker. And tonight we have Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa from Chicago's 35th Ward. They've been doing some awesome work in Chicago around ending contracts with ICE. I know recently they got some victories around the welcoming city ordinances. And then we will have Alan Morris, who's legislative affairs associate with Raíces, and highlighting, especially in this, I want to take a moment because from the discussion we had last night, and just elevate and put a spotlight on the fact that it's Women's History Month, right? And so take a moment to highlight that. A lot of these stories, there was about a year ago, just happened, 155 plus Haitian women, African women went on a hunger strike while in detention. And also the stories that we will hear and we've heard come out of Georgia. These are these stories of struggle here that we're going to highlight, and the importance of that women have played in these roles to make this struggle happen and real. And that's something that came up in our conversation the other night. And I just want to take a moment to say that. Then Carmen Souvieta, who she's been in the struggle down in Texas. Her husband was deported. He's been dealing and fighting back with our draconian enforcement system down there in Texas, and we're going to hear from her and her story and how they've been fighting back down there. Then we are going to have Victor Diaz, migrant justice activist up in Vermont. They've been for a while, they've been logging the struggle up there. Dairy farms, they've had a lot of victories up that way, and he'll be sharing about what they've been up to and what's going on up in Vermont with us tonight. Then we'll have Ana Laura, who was a member of Arise Worker Center in Chicago, and who was since deported to Mexico, where she's in Mexico City, en la Ciudad de Mexico, working with Deportados en la Lucha organization down there, continuing to struggle. So we will be hearing, I'm looking forward to hearing her stories. Then after that, Eduardo Semaniego, who is an activist in Georgia, long in the struggle there. He was detained. His story's out there. He was tortured in these infamous detention centers in Georgia. And he'll be sharing what he's up to and how we can continue on. And finally, at the end, we'll have our comrade Jorge Mujica, and we'll find out ways to get involved, not only through the petition that Chloe shared about that MiJente has. I shared it in the chat. We'll make sure to follow up with folks on that. And what we're also going to have how you can participate, perhaps like take this forum tonight as a model for something that you could share wherever y'all may be across the country. They're happening, plug in with folks, and you could find out ways to join the work that we're doing in the Immigrant Rights Working Group. And again, Jorge Mujica will join us to share about some work happening in Chicago. So that was a lot. Thank you for indulging me for a second. And without further ado, I'm gonna roll it off to the folks that we wanna hear from tonight. Our first speaker, is Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa from Chicago. And I'm going to pass it off to you, Alderman. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Alexander. It's so great to join so many comrades from across the nation for the Eyes on ICE Truth and Accountability Forum. As has been said, my name is Carlos Ramirez Rosa. I am the alderman of Chicago's 35th Ward on the northwest side of Chicago, representing 55,000 working families, so many of them working class, so many of them immigrant, many of them undocumented, and representing countries from all across the globe. Prior to my election as 35th Ward Alderman, I served as a deportation defense organizer with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. And I'm a proud member of MiJente, of the Democratic Socialists, and of the Afrosocialist Caucus. It's fitting that we are meeting this evening because in 2 days, March 27th, we will mark the 4 years since ICE agents broke into a Northwest Side home in the city of Chicago, guns blazing, and shot Felix Torres. In the home was not the suspect that ICE saw, but 8 sleeping family members, including 3 children.
Amaury.
Unfortunately, for this federal agency, this incident was not the exception. These types of tactics and these horrific acts are ICE's norm. So what are communities to do in the face of this state-sanctioned terrorism? We organize. And that's exactly what we've been doing in the city of Chicago under President Barack Obama, the deporter-in-chief, what we've continued to do and continued to do under President Trump, and what we're now continuing to do under President Joe Biden. We've formed bike brigades, we have formed family support networks, we have formed deportation defense networks, we have formed rapid response teams. We have sought to use the power that we have as individuals and as a community to come together and say no to the separation of our families and to the state-sanctioned terrorism that ICE carries out in our neighborhoods. And we've also fought to change policy, both at the state and at the city level. I'm proud to have joined with Organized Communities Against Deportation, an undocumented and immigrant-led coalition here in the city of Chicago, to have fought to have decriminalized our communities and to ensure that in the city of Chicago, our local police and our local officials could not work with ICE in any case, no exceptions. While Chicago has been called and trumpeted a sanctuary city for many years, the reality was that up until this year, in the city of Chicago, there were still 4 major exceptions where the Chicago Police Department and local officials could work with ICE to deport our residents. One was if you had a pending criminal charge. One was if you were convicted of a felony. The other was if you were charged with a felony or if you appeared on the city's gang database. Now, for some people, they might say, oh, well, that seems extremely reasonable. But when you understand the way in which Black and brown people and working poor people have historically been criminalized, when you understand the link between criminalization and deportation, you know that these are policies that are targeted towards terrorizing our communities. And so we here in the city of Chicago said, no, we will not allow members of our community who have had contact with a broken criminal justice system be treated as disposable, be treated as less than. We're gonna fight for every single member of our community, and we're gonna make sure that here in the city of Chicago, no resources are used to deport anyone. And so we fought to remove those carve-outs from the Welcoming City Ordinance. And whenever we had to talk about the reason why we didn't want people that were charged with felonies to be able to be deported by Chicago police, I thought about a woman called Brenda. Brenda's grandfather was a bracero who was deported wrongfully in the mid-20th century. She was brought here as a child, and she grew up in our school system. She met a man and had children with him, and that man was abusive. And in her struggle to find safety, she left him. She got a lease and moved into a new apartment. She lost her job. And facing eviction, she went to a payday loan center and used a social security number she had been using throughout her entire life to seek a payday loan. She was approved for the payday loan and received that money, but shortly thereafter, someone turned her over for alleged fraud. ICE viewed her as a priority for deportation because they claimed that she may have committed a felony by using someone else's social security number. I want you to think about Brenda's experience. A woman who was facing domestic violence, a woman who was seeking to take care of her children, who went to a payday loan center. In and of itself, a place that is abusive, that causes so much harm and damage to our families. And because she tried to get some money to keep a shelter over her and her children's heads, she was deemed a priority for deportation by ICE. Brenda's story is just one example of the way in which ICE claims that they are prioritizing quote unquote criminals, but in reality, they are casting a wide dragnet that treats poor people and Black people and brown people as disposable, as less than. So that is why here in the city of Chicago, we fought to say that in no case, in no exception, did we want our local officials to work with ICE. It was a long fought campaign. There was a lot of protests. There was a lot of sit-ins. There were press conferences, lots of marches. But thanks to the same activism that was led by undocumented immigrant activists, we won. And here now in the city of Chicago, our local resources are not used to deport anyone. Our local police cannot work with ICE in any case, no exceptions. And while we've won this great victory together, we know that as a local city, ICE can still terrorize our neighborhoods, and they are. They pull people over with their vehicles and arrest folks and take them out of their cars. They go to apartment buildings and claim that they're looking for one person, and then go into the apartment building and knock on every single door and take whoever it is that they find that they think does not have the proper documentation. They go into flea markets, they go into supermarkets, they make checkpoints in our neighborhoods. They cause fear. So we need President Biden to use the executive authority that our community elected him to use to stop deportations. I'm so proud of the undocumented youth who in the lead up to the 2012 presidential election sat in President Obama's campaign offices and won us deferred action for childhood arrivals. We now need President Biden to do the same, to act, to listen to our communities, and to use the authority that he has, the wide discretion that exists under the executive branch to make our communities whole. We're going to continue to fight every single day, and I'm so proud to stand in this fight with so many of you across this nation. This is an important forum that we're holding here today because our stories must be heard, and we need President Biden to act. You made a pledge to our communities, President Biden. We haven't forgotten, and we need you now to take the action that you have, the power that you have, to protect our families and to make us whole. Si se puede, gracias.
Awesome. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa. And just a quick note to our panelists: if because of the way the stream works, if you're not on, it'd be good to have your video off. Para Ana y Carmen, si pueden tener el video pagado así para. Gracias. Oh, I didn't mean to do that one. All right, sorry about that. Now that we got that out of the way, and did a little house cleaning there. Next up on tonight's forum, thank you for everyone's patience bearing with any technical issues we've run into. But next up is Alan Morris, who's a legal affairs associate with Raíces. And he is going to speak on what we're seeing right now is the elevated anti-Blackness out there in enforcement and just in society. So we're going to see it, right? We're going to see it, and I'm really excited that Alan is able to join us tonight to speak on that. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Alan. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alex. I am excited to be here, and I am so happy to be speaking with everyone in regards to Eyes on ICE Truth and Reconciliation Forum. Today, Black and brown people not only have to deal with criminalization, dehumanization, and statistically less access to legal representation, we are seeing the lives of Black men and women being blatantly disregarded. ICE has a track record of abusing immigrants who are fleeing persecution and are seeking relief. Our government has made it clear that the Black life has no value, and every time we speak up, we are silenced. Everyone heard George Floyd's cries for his mother. And unfortunately, the same cries that he blurted out and we all heard, those are the same cries that we're hearing at the border. We are placed on the back burner and not given the same opportunity for due process as our white counterparts. Since Biden took office, there have been more Black and brown people removed from the United States since all of 2020. We have Black mothers who are at the border who are having hysterectomies operated on them without their consent. We have Black mothers with children who are blatantly being disregarded the proper care that is needed to care for them as well as their unborn children. We have, when there is a way that we can come up with comprehensive immigration reform based on the promises that not only Vice President Kamala Harris made, but also President Biden made. Title 42 policies were enacted over a year ago now. Today, we call on President Biden and his administration to immediately revoke Title 42 and end expulsions of Black and brown people. Those same people are fleeing persecution, but they're not being heard. They're standing at the border, waiting to be heard, waiting for their opportunity for due process, as well for their credible fear to be taken seriously. We need President Biden and we need all of our allies to come together and to say no more. The same way we all rally together for Black Lives Matter, it is time that every organization come together and say no more and speak up on behalf of all immigrants. Not only Black immigrants, but all immigrants need your help in this moment. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to pressing on and doing whatever needs to be done to ensure that all immigrants are heard and given a fair chance.
Thank you so much, Alan. Really appreciate having you. That was Alan Morris, Legislative Affairs Associate with Raíces. I know I noticed a lot of folks in the chat asking. Thank you for that. And moving on to our portion where we're going to hear folks' stories, testimonials that we're compiling here with their stories of what they've dealt firsthand, right? And I think more importantly, then we'll hear their stories of how they've fought back, which is what we're all here to hear. But I think this is so important for us to be a part of, and I'm really glad and excited to be able to be a part of this. So without without further ado, Carmen Souvieta, she is from Texas. She's been long in the struggle, protecting her family and fighting for all of us in the community. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it up to Carmen. Carmen, si puedes prender tu video y ya estamos listas, te paso a ti. Muchísimas gracias por participar esta noche con nosotros y por contarnos por participar y decir que sí, va a participar y contarnos su historia. So, gracias y se la paso a usted.
Muchas gracias. Pues mi nombre es Carmen Souvieta y tengo 3 hijos, soy mexicana, también soy miembro de MiJente, aunque en un lugar donde no hay miembros de MiJente, pero también participo en ICE fuera de Austin, una organización que fue creada justo para sacar inmigración de la ciudad. Ahora mismo estoy organizando para unas personas que viven en una iglesia de refugiados que están desde el tiempo de Obama, que es una deuda que se tiene con ellos desde que este presidente era vicepresidente. Y mi historia con inmigración pasó en el 2001, fue el primer encuentro con la policía con mi esposo y fue un proceso legal. En el 2008 lo detuvieron y lo pasaron con inmigración, lo saqué bajo fianza. Fue un pleito muy largo tanto dentro de migración como ya afuera. Después de eso vienen todas las torturas de las cortes, de las citas, del juicio, de si lo quiere uno pelear, si uno quiere tratar de hacer las cosas y seguir tratando de quedarse en este país, pues ya nuestros hijos estaban grandes y no queríamos no queríamos regresar y empezar de cero con ellos en la escuela, ya estábamos estables aquí. Entonces, durante este encuentro con inmigración, o primero con la policía y después con inmigración, fue una gran tortura, fue un proceso de 4 años adentro del país, peleando dentro del país. Después él salió y continuamos continué peleando yo adentro y él afuera. Pero antes de que él saliera, mi hija fue diagnosticada con diabetes y creímos que esa va a ser una razón para que migración, diabetes tipo 1, que es insulino dependiente. Entonces creímos que tal vez iba a ser una razón, ¿verdad? Porque era un proceso nuevo para nosotros, un proceso de aprendizaje, y sería muy difícil que deportaran a una niña a un lugar que no conocía, a un lugar que no sabíamos si iba a tener el acceso médico que tiene aquí o la insulina que tiene aquí. Sin embargo, mi hija cayó en una gran depresión por todas las razones, porque había sido diagnosticada diabética y porque estaba su papá en el proceso de deportación. Y entonces mi hija fue hospitalizada justo por la depresión severa, fue hospitalizada, y el otro día que ella sale del hospital, que fue el 18 de febrero, el 19 de febrero mi esposo tenía una cita en San Antonio en la corte, y pues era muy difícil que lo deportaran. Ese era mi pensamiento, ¿verdad? Que cómo iban a deportarlo cuando su hija acababa de salir del hospital. Sin embargo, la sorpresa, y yo no me había preparado, ¿verdad? Estábamos activamente mandando cartas a migración y pidiendo que no lo deportaran. Pero bien, ese día, al otro día de que ella sale del hospital, lo deportan. En ese momento me convertí en madre soltera, madre de una adolescente con situación bastante difícil y con un hijo de 2 años que no sabía qué significaban fronteras, qué significaban países, que no hay palabras para explicarle a un niño de esa edad qué significa. Solo buscaba a su papá en la camioneta cada que llegábamos de la guardería. Él llegaba buscándolo porque él creía que su papá estaba ahí. No hay palabras que se puedan explicar a un niño de esta edad. Tampoco hay sentimientos que curen el dolor de los padres o de la madre que lo está viendo. Esta frustración y este coraje se convirtió en mí en empatía para otros y también en empoderamiento. Me he convertido en testigo del dolor y de la criminalización de las minorías. He visto este sistema de negocio humano ha dejado huérfanos, víctimas de la ausencia, de la ausencia de los padres, o huérfanos, porque algunos de estos padres han sido asesinados, secuestrados después de que llegan a sus países de origen. He visto viudos y viudas por la ausencia, o porque les mataron a esos seres después de que los deportaron. He sido testigo de los gritos de las madres detenidas en los centros de detención en el 2018, cuando me hablaban y me gritaban: por favor, ayúdenme a encontrar a mi hijo, me quitaron a mi hijo y no sé qué hacer. Me convertí en testigo de la impotencia, de la frustración y de tener las manos vacías con el enfrentamiento hacia este monstruo que es inmigración. En toda esta criminalización ha sido muy particular y muy dirigida. Ha sido muy particular y dirigida a la pobreza, a las minorías, porque los ricos tienen suficiente dinero para pagar suficientes abogados y no tocar la cárcel. Ni siquiera se habla de ellos. Desde este tiempo también me he vuelto informada e informadora a mi comunidad de lo que realmente pasa en este sistema, de cómo se ha traficado con las vidas humanas, de cómo se torturan estas vidas humanas. Les puedo hablar de miles de historias o de muchísimas historias. Les puedo hablar de mi hermano, que en este momento está en Tres Ríos, detenido con felonía por reentre, que los que estamos activos dentro del sistema de migración sabemos lo que significa. Les puedo hablar de mi cuñada que fue deportada y que dejó sus hijos solos, que tampoco le importó migración. Les puedo hablar de mis amigos, les puedo hablar de mis primos. Las historias siguen y siguen y siguen, pero hay muy pocas que se levanta la voz. Por miedo a la represión, por miedo a ser juzgados porque inmediatamente viene detrás la criminalización. Hay mucho trabajo por hacer. Y mucho compromiso de no solo escuchar, sino estar activos. Desde entonces estoy activa y pues ahora estoy trabajando con la organización de santuarios en Austin, donde se encuentran 3 personas en la iglesia, Hilda, Alirio y Iván, y también con ICE fuera de Austin, y también apoyando otras organizaciones. No solamente estas, así que mi entrega es total en el poco tiempo que me queda de mi trabajo regular. Gracias por estos foros, gracias por abrirnos estos espacios a la tortura del dolor, porque eso es lo que existe detrás de cada historia. Y solo puedo decir que gracias por la invitación a darle voz al dolor, a que llegue a los oídos y ojalá que a las preguntas. Muchas gracias.
No, muchísimas gracias a ti, Carmen. Thank you very much. Un placer porque puedo participar esta noche y there's a lot in that story. There's a lot of the struggle and a lot of the fight. And thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight, Carmen. Muchísimas gracias. So yeah, I mean, Carmen exemplifies, right, what the fight back, and that's what's so important about these stories, and that's what we're here to join together and as best we can see where we can fit in this work that is without end right now, especially. So without further ado, I'm gonna move along. With Victor Diaz, because I know he has to get up early tomorrow. So we're going to pass it up to Victor Diaz from Migrant Justice, activist up in Vermont. And so, Victor, si puedes prender tu video y vamos a estar listos para pasártela a ti para que cuentes tu historia con nosotros. Gracias.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Soy Víctor Díaz. Gracias, Alexander. Estamos un poco bajos de internet, pero si me disculpan, yo voy a bajar la cámara si se obstruye o si dejan de escucharme. Dejan un mensaje ahí, por favor, para que a lo mejor lo puedo leer y continuamos. Bueno, mi nombre es Víctor Díaz, como ya lo habían mencionado. Yo soy miembro activo de Justicia Migrante. Una organización que está aquí en el estado de Vermont. Entonces, yo soy miembro activo de la organización y yo trabajo en una granja lechera aquí vemos como en una encuesta se ha derivado con 1,500 trabajadores, pero creo que ahora más. Y pues bueno, gracias por el espacio. Les voy a compartir un poco de mis experiencias, lo que ha sido trabajar aquí. Pues bueno, yo conocí a Justicia Migrante. Justicia Migrante es una organización de base que ayuda a defender los derechos de los trabajadores aquí en el estado. Entonces, yo a través de el trabajo que a veces ha sido un poco difícil porque en este estado es un estado rural más pegado con la frontera con Canadá. Entonces ha sido difícil y es un gran reto para nosotros estar viviendo y estar trabajando aquí muy cerca de la migra. Entonces ha sido difícil, pero no imposible y seguimos aquí. Entonces, les voy a contar un poquito de mi historia, de mis anécdotas y pues qué chido que se ha formado este foro y que he sido invitado para contarles un poquito de mis experiencias. Como ustedes saben, trabajar en una granja donde hay como alrededor de 2,000 vacas es un gran reto para mí, ¿no? Como desvelarme, por ejemplo, trabajé 15 horas, debo despertarme a las 3 de la mañana, entonces es un tanto difícil, pero también como escuchaba la compañera Carmen, como es algo bonito, es algo inspirador que motiva a muchas más personas a levantarse en un movimiento de lucha. Entonces, pues es algo bien bonito, es algo que, que me ayuda a crecer y a aprender y también expandir todo lo que yo he aprendido y lo que yo conozco. Entonces, bueno, siguiendo el paso, pues justicia migrante, somos muchas personas que, que, que habemos como muchos trabajadores entonces pues hemos vivido retos en este estado por la migra, porque gracias a la organización y gracias a todos nosotros, hemos hecho campañas, hemos hecho campañas, por ejemplo, como las licencias, que fue un proceso como de 2 años, pero al fin se logró y con un movimiento de lucha de todos los compañeros y muchas personas de iglesias y muchas personas de la escuela y muchos aliados, fue posible como ganar las licencias, pero después de eso venían como los demás retos, ¿no? Como los departamentos de policías que aquí están, como si te veían manejar después de tener tu licencia, pues prácticamente como ser color de piel morena, te discriminaban y llamaban a la inmigración. Entonces, eso fue uno de los grandes retos de que tú tienes tu licencia, pero a la vez tienes miedo a no conducir libremente aún teniendo tu licencia, ¿no? Entonces, es uno de los retos que hemos vivido nosotros y hemos sabido que el Departamento de Policía y el DMV tienen una colaboración con inmigración porque hubo varios arrestos. De estos arrestos entre el 2016 y 2018 hubieron muchísimos arrestos y 40 de ellos eran afiliados y miembros activos de la Organización de Justicia Migrante y pues eso era injusto porque nosotros no estamos haciendo nada malo, nosotros solo estamos conduciendo libremente y pienso que eso es algo injusto, ¿no? Eso pasó con las licencias y todo eso, ¿no? Pero yo pongo de mi parte porque yo fui un miembro blanco de la migra, porque yo expresaba mi libertad de expresión en varias reuniones, en varias protestas, yo me hacía público, varias personas, reporteros, se acercaban a mí, me entrevistaban y me preguntaban qué está pasando y todo eso, y yo les contaba, ¿no? Entonces, yo siempre era un miembro activo dentro de la organización, yo viajé a varios estados para aprender sobre mis derechos y y la migración me siguió y me arrestó y me encarceló como 15 días Entonces, es algo injusto que no solo pasa en este estado, pasan en varios estados. Entonces, es algo injusto de que por expresar nuestra libertad de expresión seamos arrestados, ¿no? Entonces, es algo injusto, ¿no? Entonces, en todos los arrestos que han habido, con todas las 40 personas que han sido afiliados dentro de la organización, que hemos sido blancos de inmigración, entonces pensamos, ¿no? Que esto tiene que parar, ¿cómo le hacemos, no? Entonces, 3 de las personas que de verdad éramos blancos y más miembros activos dentro de la organización, nos arrestaron. Entonces, nos dijeron, ¿qué podemos hacer? Entonces, nosotros decidimos demandar a la migra y gracias a muchas personas, como les vuelvo a repetir, personas de iglesia, personas voluntarias y personas del colegio que nos apoyaron y varios abogados de varios estados nos apoyaron para demandar a esta gran agencia de inmigración. Demandar a la migra no fue fácil, pero quedarnos en las sombras, quedarnos en la incertidumbre, no fue una opción. Entonces optamos 3 personas y pues demandar a la migra da miedo, demandar a la migra, no sé cómo puede explicar a personas que son nativos acá o que tienen papeles y así, no, pero en mi caso, demandar a la migra da miedo y yo tuve que tomar una decisión, o sí se puede o no se puede, o veremos qué pasa, ¿no? Entonces, pues sí, me arriesgué a todo, a lo que pasara y demandamos a la migra. Y pues de tanta presión y todo, sí logramos ganar un acuerdo en que ellos pararan nuestra deportación y sí se pudo, pero no era todo lo que nosotros estábamos pidiendo, pero sí se logró. Entonces, esto es un gran mensaje y nos han llamado, nos han preguntado. De hecho, hemos salido en los mejores canales famosos de las noticias, pidiendo como entrevistas de cómo puede ser posible que personas inmigrantes puedan demandar a una gran agencia, y pues sí se pudo, y pues de mi parte es un gran ejemplo para dar ejemplo a más organizaciones que todo es posible, con empuje, con un gran empeño, con un gran trabajo, todo es posible. Y pues no ganamos todo lo que nosotros queríamos, pero sí logramos parar nuestra deportación, y pues escuchando con el nuevo presidente que puede que dé mejores posibilidades que las demás expresidentes, y esperamos que eso sea posible. Y sí, no sé qué tanto del tiempo esté consumiendo y quisiera compartirles mucho más, pero igual y quisiera como decirles que todo es posible, que siempre pongamos nuestro granito de arena, nuestro gran empuje, y no importa de qué país seamos, pero todo es posible. Muchísimas gracias por escucharme.
No, gracias a usted, Victor. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you, Victor, for sharing your story with us tonight, and to show that, yeah, that we have these, these cases, they come up, and it shows with organizing with community, we could fight back and we could win. So thank you, Victor, for sharing that with us tonight. Moving on, up next we have Ana Laura, who is a member of Arise Chicago Workers Centers, and who is now organizing and working in Mexico City, en la Ciudad de México, with Deportados en la Lucha. Ahora sigue Laura, Ana Laura, si puede prender su video y contarnos su historia y muchísimas gracias por participar. Gracias, Ana.
Gracias, buenas noches. Bueno, voy a tratar de ser breve porque mi historia abarca creo que ambos lados y a veces estamos acostumbrados solamente a escuchar lo que pasa allá y a veces no volteamos mucho o no se habla mucho a hablar de lo que está pasando cuando uno es deportado. Pues yo soy miembro de Arise Chicago y ahora soy también fundadora del colectivo Deportados Unidos en la Lucha. Yo me sumé a Rise Chicago cuando todavía vivía en Chicago. Yo viví casi 16 años en la ciudad de Chicago y me sumé al Centro de Trabajadores Rise después de que mis compañeras y yo empezamos a pasar una serie de abusos laborales. Tuve la oportunidad de conocer la organización, tuve la oportunidad de conocer acerca de mis derechos y pues iniciamos una campaña de sindicalización, lo cual para mí fue el principio de que cambiara mi vida, ¿no? Realmente aprender de mis derechos, por primera vez después de tantos años en Estados Unidos, tomar el valor para defenderme y defender a mi comunidad, pues cambió mi vida y me empecé a involucrar ya de lleno en la lucha por inmigrante y en la lucha por los derechos, por los derechos laborales. Al igual que como Víctor, yo también participé en la campaña y en varias cosas, también estuve con un activismo muy activo y que creo que al final de cuentas ese es el motivo real que está detrás de mi deportación. En los 16 años que viví en aquella ciudad de Chicago, jamás cometí ningún delito, nunca hice nada mal, siempre pagué mis impuestos. Creí que podía ser merecedora de tener en algún momento mis documentos, pero sin embargo no fue así. Fui deportada el 30 de septiembre del año 2016. Tengo una penalidad de 20 años para no regresar a Estados Unidos. De esos 20 años llevo apenas 4 aquí. Y una de las cosas que sí es importante y creo que se ha mencionado aquí es la importancia de educar a nuestra comunidad, de empoderarnos, de organizarnos y de que sepan nuestros derechos. Porque una cosa que fue muy importante es que creo que lo que hizo un poco la diferencia en mi deportación es que yo traía todos los conocimientos que tuve en Arise. Gracias a eso y a pesar de sentirme sola, de no saber qué hacer, pues fue que pude iniciar el colectivo, ¿no? O realmente una de mis primeras preguntas cuando yo llegué aquí es, ¿qué pasa, no? ¿Cómo es posible que estamos en esta lucha tan fuerte en Estados Unidos, siempre tratando de conseguir la reforma migratoria, siempre tratando de parar las deportaciones? ¿Y cómo es que cuando ya estamos aquí de repente somos olvidados? Cuando yo llegué aquí a la Ciudad de México, en ese momento no existía todavía ningún grupo. Afortunadamente ahora, después de 4 años, la comunidad cada día está muchísimo más organizada. Yo tuve la oportunidad de conocer a otras personas, otros compañeros que estaban en la misma situación que yo, y pues al escuchar sus historias, todas eran similares, ¿no? Somos gente que habíamos migrado, que habíamos trabajado, y también que en algún momento pues era un poco complicado para nosotros regresar a México. Digo, es difícil para todos, pero a veces es difícil por la edad, porque representamos a una primera generación donde no dominamos el inglés para considerarlo una herramienta laboral, donde la mayoría de mis compañeros han trabajado en la construcción o otros como yo siempre trabajé en una tienda, ¿no? Hay gente que trabajó en la fábrica, en la construcción, y que lamentablemente cuando llegamos a México, pues no es nada fácil encontrar trabajo, no es nada fácil empezar una vida aquí después de que tenías una vida construida en Estados Unidos. No es fácil perderlo todo, no es fácil saber que no puedes regresar a casa y que pasen los días y que tienes que seguir aquí preguntándote cuándo podrás volver. Mis hijos siguen estando en Chicago. Me costó por la burocracia, por todo lo que hay, tanto de que hay que conseguir papeles, tanto en México como en Estados Unidos, para que vinieran a verme. A uno De mis hijos apenas lo pude ver hace un mes, después de 4 años, y aún así me siento afortunada, porque conozco yo aquí personas, mamás, y creo que la problemática es en general, pero voy a hablar un poco de la problemática de las mamás, de las mujeres que hemos sido separadas de nuestros hijos y que no es nada fácil, ¿no? El perderse siempre, pues todas las fechas importantes, el no poder estar ahí con ellos en sus graduaciones, en sus cumpleaños, en todos esos momentos que ellos necesitan de uno y no poder estar. Y yo por eso comentaba, yo me siento afortunada porque pasaron 4 años y pude abrazar a mis hijos, pero yo conozco mamás que están aquí, que estamos luchando, que estamos tratando de cambiar las cosas, que no han visto a sus hijos a veces hasta por más de 10 años y que nadie ha hecho nada, a nadie le ha importado, ¿no? Realmente que estas familias estemos y sigamos separadas. De un día a otro pasé de ser una migranta a ser una deportada y ahora a una mamá transnacional, ¿no? Y poco se habla de la realidad de las mamás transnacionales, y somos muchas. Muchos de estas personas deportadas somos madres que nos han separado de nuestros hijos por muchos años y que todavía no vemos la luz para cuando esto se pueda solucionar. Por eso yo quería hablar un poco más de esta parte, de qué es lo que pasa aquí. Es muy difícil para la mayoría de las personas que son deportadas el adaptarse a México. Sí sabemos que es nuestro país y de hecho a veces somos juzgados también aquí en México porque extrañamos Estados Unidos, porque a veces les es difícil a la gente comprender por qué queremos regresar al país que nos expulsó. Es muy difícil entender que esto es algo muy humano, que es algo muy profundo y que tiene mucho que ver con nuestras familias, ¿no? Yo aquí lo que hemos hecho y lo que nos hemos esforzado mucho es justo en construir comunidad, en fortalecernos, en construir redes de apoyo que nos ayuden a reintegrarnos a México, porque cada día vemos más difícil la posibilidad de regresar a casa, pero no porque lo veamos difícil, dejamos de luchar. Seguimos luchando y yo por eso aplaudo estos foros y qué bueno y agradezco infinitamente que hayan sumado a un miembro, a una miembro de la comunidad deportada y retornada en México. Yo espero en verdad que empecemos a integrarnos más, que las luchas se armonicen, las luchas se integren, porque seguimos siendo la misma comunidad, seguimos dando la misma lucha. No puede ser que al momento que las personas sean deportadas seamos olvidadas. Nuestras familias están separadas, nuestras familias mixtas por las que hemos luchado siempre, tenemos que tratar de unirlas. Yo fui deportada durante la administración Obama cuando el actual presidente Biden era vicepresidente. Yo creo que tienen una deuda con toda nuestra comunidad, tienen una deuda con nuestras familias que hemos aportado por tantos años, que hemos construido una vida y que pues también se están violentando los derechos de sus ciudadanos, porque pues nuestros hijos también son ciudadanos estadounidenses y tienen el derecho a ser felices y tienen el derecho a tener a su mamá y a su papá juntos, tienen el derecho a crecer junto con ellos y no que nos tengan separados. Nosotros, nuestra lucha se ha convertido, digamos, binacional. Trabajamos mucho aquí para que se facilite la reintegración de nuestra comunidad, pero pues seguimos trabajando con sensibilizar también a la gente aquí en México y pues también hacemos mucho esfuerzo para que ustedes allá no se olviden de nosotros, que nos sigan incluyendo en la lucha, que podamos juntos trabajar para que estas familias puedan volver a unirse, ¿no? Realmente las variantes son muchas, desde enfrentar esta maternidad transnacional, desde también a veces madres que sus hijos quedan bajo custodia del Estado porque no tienen quien más pueda ver por sus hijos allá y que tenemos que estar peleando desde acá custodias. Realmente es muy, muy, muy amplio todo lo que pasa también de este lado. Entonces yo lo único que para ir cerrando sería agradecer de nuevo esta oportunidad de hablar de lo que pasa de este lado y después de una deportación. Y pues solamente pedir que nos sigan tomando en cuenta, que sumemos la lucha y que hagamos todo para que esto cambie, que se paren las deportaciones, pero que también podamos traer a miles de personas que hemos sido separadas, que podamos regresar a casa. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a usted, Ana Laura, por estar aquí esta noche. Thank you so much, Ana Laura, for that powerful story. And it's true, what we're dealing with, you know, it's an international crisis here. And, you know, we have to make sure that that's taken into account. And I'm glad we have that perspective tonight. About just how deep these family separations go and how long they go. And it's not this administration or the previous administration. We know it's a long cyclical problem that we well, frankly, you know, as the Immigrant Rights Working Group of the Democratic Socialists of America, we know, you know, the crisis is the neoliberal, the racial capitalism that is keeping that system going, right? It's creating a caste system of folks that are dependent. Well, without getting too much on my soapbox, I want to keep going on tonight with our next speaker, Eduardo Semaniego, who was an activist in Georgia before being deported. And Eduardo, powerful story. So Eduardo, without further ado, pass it off to you.
Hello?
Yes, the floor is yours, Eduardo.
Okay, can you see me? It seems that my camera is not showing as...
Yeah, no, we don't see you.
Okay, how about now?
No, we do hear you though, but yeah, we're not, your camera doesn't seem to be working.
Oh no, it was working just fine right now. I'm sorry, I apologize. Just 1 second, please.
No worries. In the meantime, while we get that sorted out, I will reshare the where did I? Sorry about that. We're facing a little technical difficulties, but we have shared a petition from MiJente that I hope everyone takes the time to fill out tonight. And it's in the chat, and I will pull it up and drop it in as soon as we get going again. And also, before we wrap up, or after we wrap up the streaming portion, we're gonna then move to a discussion off of the live stream that's going on right now. We also have something that came up for folks who are in DSA. I'm going to throw it in the chat. I was going to announce this later, but since there's a little bit of time, I'm going to drop in a form for anyone who is a member or maybe interested. We do have a vacancy on our steering committee. So if any folks would be interested in that, or if you know folks from who may be in your chapter who might be interested, we're definitely, that's something that we have for folks that might be interested on that. And I'm sure I'll talk about it more once we move on here. Is Eduardo back on the line though? All right, well, I guess then I'm gonna go on with the agenda. Hopefully Eduardo is able to get back on. But in the meantime, we have, let me pull up the agenda. Sorry about that, folks. We're making do here. Okay, so it's the conclusion part, right? Call to actions at this point. I was gonna bring up the petition that folks have been signing in the chat, as well as participate in these, okay. Sorry about that. Got thrown off a little bit, but yes, what you're seeing tonight, these Eyes on ICE forums are happening across the country. The first one that I saw that I was able to participate in as an attendee was in Georgia, and then I know the following week one there was in Washington. But anyway, these are an opportunity for folks to plug in. I think they're doing up until Chloe could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think April 30th is the cutoff on these. Oh, Eduardo's back. With that, I'll fill you all in back on more specifics on what I was getting into, but I want to give the floor to Eduardo so he could share his story. And without further ado, Eduardo, thank you so much, and I'm glad we got you back.
Thank you, Alexander, and sorry about that. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Eduardo Semaniego Amaya. I was a longtime activist for immigrant rights and human rights and access to education in the United States. I started my fight for access to education because I was denied entrance to the universities in Georgia as a result of policy 4.1.6. That's where I met the Dreamers, and eventually my fight began as a activist, as an organizer, fighting for access to education and access to citizenship for all Dreamers. But obviously, I never qualified for the DREAM Act. I was never included in it. But my fight, nevertheless, was for all others that, just like me, couldn't access, the services and everything that everyone else was able to access. My fight began in the state of Georgia. That's where I gave my first speech through a megaphone. That's where I walked every street across Atlanta, protesting, fighting, doing civil disobediences, and being arrested at the Georgia border regions in 2012 for demanding that they got rid of the policies that denied us entrance to young immigrants to colleges, even if we could pay for them. Later on, I traveled to the state of Massachusetts, where I was brought by a full ride scholarship. And eventually I ended up leaving my scholarship so I could join the fight for comprehensive immigration reform. For comprehensive immigration reform. And unfortunately, we've been fighting since then. And during my third year of college, I left college so that I could join the Pioneer Valley Worker Center in the state of Massachusetts, fighting for immigrant rights. And especially there was a case that brought me in. There was a case of Lucio. Lucio is a father of three children in the United States, a husband who was in asylum for more than 3 years during the Trump administration. I was just recently actually granted a stay, and he is now free. He lived in a basement for about 3 years of a loving church, but nevertheless, the suffering, being away from his children, not being able to kiss them goodnight, not being able to take them to school or just for a stroll to the park with his mother, that really, really opened my eyes to the inhumanities that ICE was carrying out across the country. I was personally targeted many times. Many times I was protected by my community, a strong community in Massachusetts and in Georgia. But it is unfortunate that even though my fight for human rights and immigrant rights throughout the United States, because I visited every state fighting for immigrant rights in the East Coast, from Georgia to Vermont, every state joining marches, joining civil disobediences, organizing civil disobediences, fighting for the release of our brothers and sisters, our non-binary brothers, non-binary folks in our community, and so on and so forth. Eventually, even though I was now a seasoned activist, an organizer throughout the country, I obviously never had protection. I was never protected by DACA. I was never protected by any other form of protection for deportation, but I kept fighting because it was the inhumanities that I continue to see, that I couldn't stand, and I couldn't, hold myself back from fighting. Unfortunately, I always imagined that there will be a point where I could get in trouble with ICE, because they were after people like me. They were silencing organizers, activists across the country who were defending their families from ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Unfortunately, one day I decided to travel to the state of Georgia. After working so hard in Massachusetts, I took a couple of weeks of a break, and I ended up going to Georgia just to visit. In one of my runs, I forgot my wallet and my phone, and I called a taxi. And so when I was in a taxi, that's actually when I realized that I didn't have my phone or my wallet. I notified the driver immediately. Would you please go back to my house? I forgot my wallet. I don't have my phone, and I can pay you. It was $27. For $27, I unfortunately was taken to jail. The driver refused to listen. My house was less than a mile away from where he stopped and called the police. The police booked me in that night, and in the next morning, they transferred me to Cobb County, one of the most infamous prisons in the country, along with many others in the state of Georgia, immigration and just detention facilities. And so I was detained, and obviously Cobb County was one of the counties most renowned across the country for their cooperation with the 287G bill that was passed by Democrats in 2007. One of the last gifts from Senator Birch in Virginia. And 287G continues to allow local police officers to terrorize our communities. And I was obviously a target. The 287G bill allowed for them to keep me for a year and a half. I was transferred from the local police station in Acworth, Georgia, to Cobb County, to later the Irwin Detention Center, where we know many women, many mothers, many sisters have been the subject of basically violation of their body, and many surgeries that they weren't aware of, and that today is under investigation. After Irwin Detention Center, I was transferred to another 2 detention centers for a total of 5 detention centers in 3 months and a half, all with the intention that a movement that didn't, come up and support me in the jail where I was being held. I was transferred to 5 different prisons as if I was one of the worst criminals, as they treat many and most undocumented immigrants in the United States by ICE. I was not the exception. I was only yet another person that they were determined to deport, and that they eventually were able to carry out. Unfortunately, I was tortured. And what I mean by torture is this: I was denied of water for days. I was denied of food for days. I was not allowed to shower like the other inmates, like some of the other inmates. I was not allowed to speak to my brothers who had come from Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, because I was trying to help them. They would put me away from them, and they would put me in solitary confinement when I tried to help them. And when I protested their violation of human rights, it is a travesty that we still see, that some people still see ICE as something necessary. I want to say that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, for those of us that might be hearing us for the first time, has done is the most infamous organization in the United States of America today, and maybe in the world. It has gone from being an obscure negative reality hunting immigrants to being embedded in minds of millions as an unnecessary evil. Home to hateful, because I experienced it firsthand, home to hateful, xenophobic, and purely racist personnel. I want to tell everyone that ICE does not handle applications for new immigrants. They're not border security. They're not customs at the border, and they do not develop immigration policy. They are purely a deportation mafia, focused entirely on tearing families apart through as many of the stories that we've heard today, banging, throwing the door at, completely down, dragging people out of their homes, out of their jobs, out of the places that they've contributed their entire lives. We need to start seeing ICE as those working for ICE for what they are: a carefully crafted and well-oiled apparatus to carry out the racist, xenophobic, and purely hateful wishes of a small part of the American citizenry. It is a tool to drive voters to the polls for the Republican Party, and it serves nothing more to the United States people. It was created as a form of deterring terrorists from coming into the country. We know that they carry out zero of the mission that they were created to fulfill, and there are now more than 8,000 of them throughout the entire country, terrorizing entire communities. ICE consistently ranks among the worst workplaces in the federal government. In 2016, it ranked in the 300 level, meaning that it's an agency that it's not just carrying out hateful activities, but that within it, hate is the principal motor of what they do. It's today heartbreaking to say this, but we need to be aware that today there is, as a result of the white supremacist propaganda spearheaded by the Republican Party and many on the Democratic Party today, and more recently by Donald Trump, there are now young white teens who dream of one day deporting immigrants. But not only that, we must not be blind. ICE is able to carry out its operations through a wide range of agents from all backgrounds. It is a multiracial, multi-ethnic environment where those in our communities with few career prospects go to seek refuge after being denied access to dignified, well-paid jobs. We know that many of them are broken people. They're former police officers, former sex offenders, and those who had and continue to have heinous criminal records. It is unfortunate that our society has failed to provide them with rehabilitation and healing to those agents, and they end up being in a place that is toxic as ICE, and they are trained to carry out their most hateful motives. And so I just want to say that I'm incredibly happy to know that we continue to fight. I was deported in 2018. As a result of the torture that I endured, I decided to sign my voluntary, and I say voluntary departure, because I couldn't withstand anymore the torture that I was experiencing. I spent about a month and a half in solitary confinement, something that is a complete violation of humanity, and that I wish no one to experience this, as I wish no one would fall in the hands of a prison, of a jail, and much less one that is operated by ICE. It's a travesty that today Joe Biden has not acted on his promises during the campaign to stop deportations. It is a shame that he continues to carry out deportations of Black immigrants in the United States to a level higher than those being deported during the Trump administration. We need to be mindful that immigration reform and criminal justice reform have to go hand in hand and be part of each other, because those two government systems are working together to make the life of Black, brown, and people in underserved communities harder, so that they create divisions and they continue to sow hate across our communities. It's for me, it's a being deported from the place that I call home, where I attended high school, where I graduated, where I went to college, where I created families, my community, where I fought for the best values and the best traditions of best people in the United States. I was obviously in a tremendous situation when I was deported. I came to a place that I knew, but that a place that I no longer had belonged for 10 years. And so I had to begin my life from zero, from scratch. Thankfully, I had support from my family and my friends in the United States and here in America with my lovely family. But that is not the case for the hundreds of thousands of people being deported every year through ICE and through the deportation machine that is currently working in the United States. I want to send a message, and I want to say that if we want comprehensive healing immigration reform, it has to include those mothers and fathers, just like Laura, who just spoke right now, who were deported, and people like such as myself who were deported under one of the worst and most white supremacist administrations we've had in recent history. Immigration reform starts by eliminating ICE, and we need to remember that, and we need to continue to say that out loud. Immigration reform starts by eliminating ICE. While ICE exists, mothers, fathers, children, people who are not fathers or mothers, but who are good people or who want to make America their home, they should have the opportunity to do that. Migration is a natural process of humanity. Since it began, we cannot see it as something new. We've seen the Irish, we've seen the Chinese, we've seen the Japanese, we've seen the waves of immigrants who come before us, and they've only made the United States better. It is our job to demand the abolition of ICE and CBP. They are purely a deportation mafia, and we know that there is no work that they're doing to contain terrorists or other things such as what they would like to say. They're there to keep brown and Black people away from communities that are racist, and we need to end that. When I was in jail, I saw how many of the detainees were denied food, how the food came with mold, how they would rather go days without eating than eating that food because they would become sick and there would be no access to medication or access to a doctor in jail. The belief that when you fall in the hands of ICE and that you can continue your process of asylum or refuge, you want to come to the United States through the right process, falling into the hands of ICE blocks all of that out. They make sure that once you get in there, you forget even why you are there in the first place. They torture mothers, they torture sisters, they torture brothers, they torture fathers, children. When I was lining up, when I was being booked in the Irwin Detention Center, I was behind the bars watching how a father was chained from his hands and from his feet. His only crime was wanting a better life for him and for his family. But right behind him was something that I will never forget. It was a child no older than 10 years old in a prison. That's something that I couldn't believe, and that to this day continues to torment me. Seeing children being detained at the border is one thing. Seeing children caged is another. Seeing children through TV is another thing, or hearing about children being in cages, it moves your heart. But watching a child being booked, being processed as if he was a criminal, and even if he was a criminal, being booked in a place that is a place of torture, of horrifying things happening there every day to good immigrants and good people, regardless of their history or their criminal history. Everyone deserves a chance to fulfill their life wherever they choose to be at. That is something that I know now, and that I consistently, just like everyone should be, we need to continue to move on from criminalizing our communities through the words that we share, and to a process of, this is a natural process of people moving from one place to another. We know that we've had hand as someone who considers himself a binational. I'm a citizen of the United States and I'm a citizen of Mexico. And while I might not be a citizen of the United States, I exercised everything I could so that others could become citizens. And today I find myself in a place in Mexico now that I continue to see ICE doing the same thing that they were doing to me and they were doing to hundreds of thousands of people. I continue to fight the best way I can. I've narrated my story so that people don't turn a blind eye to what's really happening inside Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We know that thousands of children have been sexually abused by ICE agents. We know that the people that, when you get into the hands of ICE, they make it as hard as possible for you to communicate to the people outside, and this is by design. ICE is nothing but a well-oiled machine determined to keep brown and black people all the way to the bottom of the economic ladder. It is due time for Joe Biden to act. It is due time for Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas to go down to the border and see what is happening to these children with his own eyes, so then they can tell us again, just like they said during the Trump administration, this will not happen under my watch. Those were the words of Joe Biden. And it's exactly what was happening during the Trump administration is happening right now. We need to continue to raise our voices, to ally with members of every community in the United States to eliminate ICE. Immigration, comprehensive immigration reform, healing reform starts by bringing those who have been deported and reuniting them with their families, and by eliminating ICE. And that's my message today. I will continue to fight from where I am, and I miss my home and I miss my friends. This is also my home, but I was deported under the worst conditions, just as hundreds of thousands had been. It's due time for comprehensive healing immigration reform, and that starts by eliminating ICE. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. Thank you for your story and for sharing that. Folks, I know we've gone a little bit over time, but I thought, with the stories of the nature, it was important to hear what folks had to say. With that, I'm going to try to wrap this up as quickly as I can. I've shared the petition that we have that MiJente put out, so please, before you leave tonight, make sure that is filled out. I also, I'm going to share now with everyone a organizing guide that was put together by the Immigrant Rights Working Group of DSA. In that organizing guide, it's ways to get started if you're 101 with organizing, and good pointers in there, resources, reading material. We also link folks to the organizing guide that MiJente put out for these Eyes on ICE forums. So if you're interested in putting one together to help out locally where you're at, please check that out. It's a super awesome, super helpful, and it helped me do a lot of the lifting to get this together tonight. So thank you all for that. And finally, Always want to throw it out there. If you don't have a political home, look for a political home. We here at DSA, I know, would be more than happy to have folks. And I know MiJente is also a membership-based Latinx organization. So if you haven't, I know AfroSoc is also in the Afrosocialists, Socialists of Color Caucus. They're also a membership-based organization. So please absolutely plug in. To find your political home that's in your wherever you may be located and connect. The immigrant rights movement is broad, it's everywhere. There's work likely happening near you. If you're not already plugged in, find folks and see where you can plug in. And finally, one of our co-chairs, our Chicago co-chair, Jorge Mujica, was supposed to be here tonight and passed along, sends his apologies why he couldn't make it, but he says that the Día Sin Inmigrantes, which is an ongoing thing that's been for a few years now. This year is scheduled to be on April 30th. It's being organized. There's already ongoing organizing in Chicago, San Diego, Los Angeles, Alabama, and Washington. So there's definitely that happening. Hit us up at either immigrant rights at dsacommittees.org for more information on that, and I could plug y'all in with Jorge on that. And on that, I'd like to pass it off to Chloe from MiJente. To first of all, thank you so much for being here with us, and I'll pass it off for you to us.
Thank you so much again, everybody. And thank you so much to the speakers today, Carmen, Ana Laura, Victor, Alan, Eduardo, Carlos, and everybody who spoke. And we just wanted to wrap by saying that it's unacceptable that over 127,000 people have been deported or expelled just in the first 60 days of the Biden administration, right? It's unacceptable that the US government continues to spend over $25 billion every year to operate the world's largest immigration detention system. And it's unacceptable that the Biden administration continues to perpetuate the lie that our people are disposable simply because of the ways they've been criminalized by a criminal legal system that we all know is corrupt, racist, and doesn't keep us safe. So we're going to continue to keep up the pressure. We're going to be hosting a national truth and accountability forum to specifically lift up the experiences of folks who have been deported under the Biden administration in the past 60 days. That's going to be on April 1st. And we're going to continue to be organizing Eyes on ICE forums and truth and accountability sessions up until our final truth and accountability forum on May 3rd, where we are calling on Secretary Mayorkas to make the time to listen to folks who are being directly impacted by his decisions. So thank you all so much for being here with us tonight. We hope that you'll sign the petition and continue to stay involved, and that you will spread the word to folks in your community. Thank you so much. Have a great night.